Well, folks, tonight we will be observing yet another lean, delicious satire that throws the rich on the chopping block. Welcome to Movies You've Seen. My name is Liv, I am your cinematic host, and what a treat! This evening we will be visiting the Hawthorne, a waterfront eating house accessible only by a private ferry with a pledge to give you an unmatched experience of a lifetime. Be sure to like this video and push me through the algorithm. I appreciate all your comments, your thoughts and ideas, and most of all your subscriptions. Hit that notification bell so you know when I post next. Let's begin. Tyler and Margot are presumably a couple, yet loosely embody this. It's easy to spot that they're polar opposites, as one is clearly here for the experience and the other is here because it's a free meal. Tyler pleads with Margot to not smoke before boarding the private ferry that will transport them to the docks of the Hawthorne itself. He claims that it will ruin her flavor palette and therefore she wouldn't be able to fully embrace this $1,250 opportunity. Upon them boarding, there is an obvious, hardly disguised introduction to whom we will be watching for the next hour and 47 minutes. A fading movie star and his annoyed assistant, a pretentious food critic and her yes-man associate, a well-off married couple riddled with regrets, and three work buddies that embody the bros before hoes rhetoric. The first taste appetizer to make its way into the mouths of this highfalutin bunch is a cluster of lemon caviar made with algae gathered on a bed of foam in an oyster shell. Tyler is smitten by the small yet overpowering flavors in his mouth, calling it laughably good. Throughout their boat ride, Tyler feels the need to educate Margot just how exquisite this tour is and how the food they're eating is not to be taken lightly. No, these dishes are what Michelin stars are made of. But Margot struggles to see the significance as she's an outsider to this world, not just to molecular gastronomy, but to the cocoon of wealth. The guests are getting acquainted with one another as they deboard the ferry, and they all get checked in by the frankly uninterested, straight-faced host, Elsa. She greets Tyler and Margot, accidentally calling Margot by a different woman's name that's under the reservation. Tyler makes an effort to hastily explain that Margot was her replacement, something Margot knew nothing about due to the confused look on her face. She wasn't the only one taken aback because, oddly enough, Elsa was also perturbed by this piece of information for reasons we will soon learn later. Before we see the Hawthorne, Elsa takes the group on a tour of the backdrop, which is the private island itself. Along the way, they walk past a few of the island's relics, making for good conversation and breaking the ice between the ebullient individuals. The Hawthorne's austere presentation surely doesn't take away from its intended beauty, but it is intimidating. The swivel front door starts at the base of a 30-foot hallway that guests make their way through. To their right is a refined dining room with uncomfortable severity. The dining room is attached to the open kitchen where most of this story takes place. The guests are given the opportunity to observe the cooks as they sculpt and shape the edible art soon to be consumed. Tyler can't help himself but to overstep because when you give someone like him an inch, he takes the whole foot. He makes his presence known to a nearby cook who is working on a dish. Tyler tries to flex his knowledge about the technique the cook is using, and he's attempting to impress him with his comprehension, but instead, he only annoys the cook and us in the audience. In comes Chef, a noticeably unpleasant presence from the moment he appears on screen. Before he makes his introduction to the guests, Elsa whispers something to him, causing him to look in Tyler and Margot's direction. Naturally, it's an off-putting moment for Tyler and Margot because they, like all of us, want to know what Elsa said to Chef about them. The amuse-bouche dish is served. Cucumber melon, milk snow, and shard lace on a black plate. The first thing that came to mind when I saw this dish was the Willy Wonka candy dots. Tyler sneaks his phone out to take pictures after it was clearly instructed not to do so, and unfazed at Margot's nonchalance. She asks him to explain the hype around foodie culture, to which Tyler has a whole spiel ready. He claims that athletes, musicians, and painters ultimately don't matter, that what they do is irrelevant. In comparison, chefs play with the raw materials of life itself, death itself. He's seen all the shows, all the science behind ripened strawberries or raw scallop muscle contractions. He claims cooking to be art on the edge of the abyss, which is where God works too. The cooks carefully assemble the first course, and Chef makes his way to the front of the open kitchen. Like a militia, the cooks get into formation at the sound of Chef's clap and go back to work as he greets the guests in the dining room. He introduces himself as Julian Slowick, and that they will be ingesting fat, salt, sugar, protein, bacteria, fungi, various plants and animals, and at times entire ecosystems. The premier plateau is called the island. Plants from around the actual island are placed on rocks from the shore, covered in barely frozen seawater, which will flavor the dish as it melts. Julian tells them that they, the people on this island, are not important. The island and the nutrients it provides exist in its most perfect state without humans gathering, manipulating, and digesting them. What happens in that room they're in right now is meaningless compared to what happens outside in nature, in the soil, in the water, and the air. But they are a frightened nanosecond, and nature is timeless. Tyler's crying by now, quite literally. It almost makes me think he would have a streak of Stendhal syndrome, which is a condition that can cause you physical illness when you're overwhelmed by art. It's either a stint of that or he's an extreme groupie, a super fan. Margot is like the rest of us, confused as to why he's crying over a speech about nature. Everybody is experiencing their dish in their own way as Elsa walks around and eavesdrops. Some like it, some couldn't be bothered with it, and some aren't even tasting it as Chef demanded. After seeing this movie once and going back to watch it, I can understand why Chef Julian's once revered passion has soured. From the moment we first see him, he looks like he truly doesn't want these people there. He's cold, unwelcoming, and lies in wait before making himself known. Truly, his disappointment in people has gotten him to this point. Every time Chef claps, everybody stops life. He gives another punishing lesson on food. This time it's about bread. He talks of its origins, its simple ingredients, and even brings our Savior, the Lord Jesus Christ, into it. Before the next dish is presented, Chef Julian reveals that tonight, they get no bread. The Hawthorne is known for its bread, so the guests are bewildered and slightly offended that they don't get any. Some of them even think it's an act of sarcasm and anticipate its arrival anytime now, but it never comes. The guests are left to enjoy the unaccompanied accompaniments, which are 6 sauces that were meant to be dipped into with the bread. And it turns out, it's pretty damn good. The dollops of sauces are small in quantity, but seem to have big tastes that can be enjoyed without staple foods. As expected, Tyler is gung-ho for this, supportive of every theme, clue, speech, or mystery that Chef Julian throws at them. And also as expected, Margot is confused as to why this is even interesting. The food critic Lillian Bloom and her kiss-ass associate sit only a few feet away as she humble brags about being able to make her own yeasty, rustic dough of perfection. She's a very close second to Tyler in terms of enthusiasm surrounding this experience, but she should be, this is her job. Elsa walks over a bowl of soup to Lillian, which she calls another broken emotion, courtesy of Chef Slowick. He stands nearby and nods at Lillian. It's a jab. Obviously, he has a history with Lillian and has something against her. The finance bros call Elsa over to complain about their breadless plates because, let's be honest, they are pretentious a-holes that attach their identities to their professions, but they would much rather be in a sports bar eating all the nuts and buffalo wings they could ever wish for. She denies their request for 3 hot-baked rolls of bread, one of them gluten-free, and this doesn't sit well with them. They grunt and they huff and puff at the sound of being told no. One of them pulls the "Do you know who we are" card. Elsa is like, yes. They are employees of the owner of the Hawthorne, so they think they have this imaginary upper hand. She tells them no again. This time the "I'm gonna get you fired, wait until I tell my boss" attitude is apparent. Elsa, the type of person that nightmares are made of, leans into one of the guys, fixes his lap napkin, and whispers, "You will eat less than you desire and more than what you deserve." Some real creepy-ish. Something isn't right. Chef is posted at the kitchen island like he's standing before a control panel on his spaceship. His eyes scour the room and his ears listen closely to the things that are being said. Tyler accidentally knocks over Margot's wine glass, causing a sudden commotion. Chef uses this opportunity to approach Margot sitting opposite of Tyler. "You haven't touched your food." There is no food. No, this is food. So, lots more food to come. Don't want to fill up? That would not be possible. I've precisely designed the portions to count for that, so you won't fill up. Please eat. The menu only makes sense if you eat. But you told us not to eat. That is not what I meant, madame, and you know it. Well, thank you for your concern, but I am perfectly capable of deciding what I eat and what. His sneer glowers as he walks away with contempt. This was a funny little exchange between them, as it almost looked like Margot was arguing with the father she never had, and Chef Julian with a teenage daughter he never had. Julian walks over to an elderly woman that sits in the corner by her lonesome. She's obviously out of place as she doesn't have any business casual attire on. She seems sunken and destitute as she looks on. He bends over and rubs his head into hers with endearment and keeps it pushing. Everybody is looking baffled at this random, inexplicable action. The third course is a plate shaped like a corn chip with abstract dots and squares randomly placed on it, yet it is still very calculated. The next course is called Memory. He has a seemingly genuine smile on his face and looks to be in good spirits, so naturally everybody is a little more laxed. He wants this next dish to evoke a memory, and before it's served, he shares a keen memory of his own. Taco Tuesday. He walks over and introduces his mummy, the lady that sat in the corner by her lonely. When I was 7 years old, one Tuesday, my father came home quite drunk. Really drunk. My mother grew angry and screamed at him, at which point he proceeded to wrap a telephone cord around her neck and pulled it tight. I wept, screamed to make him stop. To make him stop, I finally had to stab him in the thigh with kitchen scissors. You remember that, Mummy, don't you? I suppose I should have stabbed him in the throat that evening, but we're not so smart when we're that young. It was, as you can imagine, a very memorable taco night. Okay, Chef is officially off his rockers. The course is served. House-smoked breast and chicken thighs, as well as al pastor with little scissors stabbed into them. Alongside their plates, house-made tortillas are freshly folded into a metal sheet. Of all the various meal changes, this meal is the one that has been the staple at Hawthorne, and as Lillian Bloom said in an article, it put Chef Julian on the map. Laser-printed pictures are engraved on the tortillas. Everyone opens their sheets of tortillas in anticipation to view the pictures. Lillian's has pictures of restaurants that she has reviewed that have all since closed. Another jab. The old couple gets a stack with pictures of them together. Or so we think. Tyler's tortillas are pictures of him taking pictures of the food when Elsa clearly asked him not to earlier that day, and he's extremely embarrassed. George Diaz, the has-been actor, gets 2 tortillas with a poster of his old movie Calling Dr. Sunshine. The finance bros all have ledgers and wire transfer authorization forms of Cayman Island bank transactions. They're absolutely baffled at how in the world the Hawthorne got their hands on these. They call Elsa over and try to pull their Karen card, threatening to have the place shut down by the morning. As usual, Elsa is unfazed by their threats. The camera shoots back to the old couple as the wife sees an unfamiliar face on her tortilla. It's a picture of her husband and another woman. Finance bros are still trying to rationalize and save face for their fraudulent business dealings. Tyler is remorseful for taking pictures of the food and immediately wants to apologize to Chef. He ends up arguing with Margot, which results in her getting up and walking away. She heads to the restroom and Elsa stops her from going through a silver embossed door. She redirects Margot to where the restroom really is. Margot sees this as an attempt to smoke a cigarette, climbing onto the bathroom toilet to look out the window. She sees an employee walking a pair of large white angel wings across the lawn. While she's having a moment, Chef Julian comes into the restroom. Margot, like the rest of us, are kind of weirded out by this guy and she's on guard. He asks her why she didn't enjoy the last course that was served. Julian's need for total acceptance consumed him so much that he went searching for answers in the ladies' restroom. Margot questions why he cares, and Julian reveals that he takes his work so seriously that it wounds him when someone is dissatisfied. He proceeds to ask her who she is, who she really is, and where she's really from. He sees through her bluff though and tells Margot, "You shouldn't be here tonight." Eerie. Back in the dining room, the cooks are setting out a large white sheet onto the floor and adorning the sides with garlands of some sort. That damn clap. Chef announces sous chef Jeremy Loudon to the floor. Jeremy created this next dish called the mess. He studied at the Culinary Institute at Hyde Park. His goal was to work for Julian at Hawthorne. Chef agrees. Jeremy is talented. He's good. He's very good. But he's not great. He will never be great. He desperately wants Julian's prestige, his job, his talent, but he will never achieve greatness. Jeremy has forsaken everything to achieve his goals. His life is pressure. Pressure to put out the best food in the world. Even if all is right and the food is perfect and the customer and critics are happy, there is no way to avoid the mess you make of your life, body, and sanity by giving everything you have to pleasing people you will never know. He leans into Jeremy and asks if he likes his life, the life that he dreamed about. Jeremy says, "No, chef." Chef asks him, "And do you want my life? Not my position nor my talent. My life." "No, chef." Chef nods and stands in front of him before walking away. "Ladies and gentlemen, the fourth course, sous chef Jeremy's The Mess." Jeremy takes a bow and blows his head off. Well, that went left. Jeremy's lifeless body lies on the white sheet on the ground, and the cooks in the background are information before going right back to work with absolutely no emotion. All of the staff is acting as normal and tries to get the guests to calm down. Julian even goes as far as to tell them that this is all a part of the show, that this is what they paid for, and he's not lying. The next meal is served and everybody is still in utter shock, trying to decipher if that was a fake. But it was just too real to be fake. Bone marrow pressured cooked veggies, roasted filet, potato confit, and beef jus adorn their plates, and only Tyler's demented self is excited to eat. Margot asks Tyler what is going on, and he pretends not to hear her. Mr. Lebrand, one half of the older couple, he demands that him and his wife are leaving. Elsa lets him know that there is no boat out of there at this time. There's also no phone service for them to call a helicopter. His wife pleads to just do as they say, and Mr. Lebrand tells her that he will handle it. Elsa asks, "With which hand?" With which hand will you handle this? Of course, he's confused at this question, but Elsa wastes no time in deciding for him. She orders the staff to cut off Mr. Lebrand's left ring finger. His wedding ring comes right off, and the crowd goes crazy. Tyler is still eating without any emotion. His focus is purely on the food, and Margot realizes he's a true psychopath. Lillian reckons that this is all for her own good, which is why Chef Julian personally texted her to be there on that night. And everybody else is looking at Lillian like she's crazy. Her trying to rationalize tragedy? It's giving Purge. It's giving Charles Manson brainwashing. Saw even. Poor Mr. Lebrand's crying echoes in the background as Elsa brings Margot to speak with the chef in the kitchen. He clearly wants to finish his conversation with her because he tells her she's wrong and proceeds to ask her who she is again. He calls Margot on her BS again. This menu, this guest list, and the entire evening was painstakingly planned, and Margot wasn't a part of that plan. So he needs to know if she's one of them or one of the guests. But it's not a chance to help her live, no. Chef reveals they're all gonna die tonight. He asks her, would you rather die on the side who gives or the side who takes? You got 15 minutes to decide. Margot is fighting tears as she makes her way back over to Tyler, slapping him dead across the face. He doesn't care though. He's still mad that she gets to keep talking to Chef while he gets left at the table alone. Jelly! Everyone is plotting on how to get the hell out of this madhouse until one of the finance bros throws a chair at the bulletproof window. He fails miserably because the chair just bounces right back at him. Elsa responds to him like a child throwing a tantrum, offering to help him back to his seat. Here comes that damn I told you. I tried to warn you. This time it's not so cute anymore. The clap is startling and leaving everyone to clench their pearls and shudder in fear. Chef gives a quick excerpt about tea and then he leaves the floor open to questioning. Tyler uses this opportunity to flex his wits again, asking if the tea was in fact bergamot. Chef rolls his eyes and honestly, so do I. George, the actor, gets up and nervously questions what is going on. Julian tells them to think of themselves as ingredients in the degustation concept. Figuratively speaking, that would be the best way he could describe what was happening. Julian proceeds to call out the key individuals one by one, starting with Lillian Bloom. We finally get to see what his beef is with her. Beef. He claims that Lillian is responsible for the destruction of many livelihoods. It's implied that her reviews make or break the longevity of restaurants, and he's ready to pay her back with more broken emotions. Yes, another bowl of soup is placed before Lillian, except this time it's in a huge mixing bowl. It makes more sense why this is called broken emotions. She's broken a lot of people apparently. Mrs. Lee Brandt pleads to take her husband to the hospital. Chef Julian makes his way over and asks him how many times they've attended his restaurant. 11 times to be exact. Most people would consider themselves blessed if they ate there only once, yet the Lee Brandts couldn't even remember what they ate the last time they were there. They represent a flaw that Julian deeply despises: inappreciativeness. He believes he's been fooled into trying to satisfy people who could never be satisfied, starting with his own mother, who he directly calls out. Now, we finally see why his poor mother is looking like the world is going to end. She's ashamed of the son she raised. Julian admits that his restaurant is also a part of the problem here. One of the finance bros gets gutsy and reminds him, this is not your restaurant. It belongs to the actual boss, Doug Barrick, who is Julian's angel investor. He owns the island and the restaurant, and since Hawthorne is Julian's entire life, Julian would go on to say that Doug Barrick owned him. But as things have gotten more complicated, he decided he owns Doug Barrick now. Beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows that line the back wall of the dining room, a man in angel wings sits in the air with a spotlight shining on him. It's Doug Barrick. Remember those angel wings that Margot saw while she was looking out the window in the women's restroom? He's wearing those. Doug is hanging from a wire in the sky before he is slowly lowered into the freezing cold ocean water to drown. Julian airs out his grievances with Doug, which are small things like Doug questioning Julian's menu or even asking for substitutions to the meals on the menu. This deeply bothered Julian, so much so that he decided Doug needs to die. The guests watch Doug drown in terror, a front row homicide, an execution. At this moment, Julian declares his absolute freedom. Time's up, Miss Mills. Chef will now see you in his office. Julian asks Margot her decision, if she wants to be on his side or the other. He ultimately makes the decision that Margot is meant to be on his side, the shoveler side, which are service workers. His words, not mine. He asks how she knew Mr. Liebrandt because she had been eyeing him all evening. He gathered that she was servicing him on the low. And he was right. Margot spells it out for Julian just where her relationship is with Mr. Liebrandt. Julian asks if she enjoys providing service to others, which she says yes. She asks the same. He says he used to. Honestly, Margot is in the best spot because she has an actual chance to pick Chef's brain and buy some more time. He won't give anyone else the time of day, so hopefully she's using this to her advantage. Chef brings everyone outside to the front of the restaurant. They line up beside one another, awaiting what's to come next. Chef presents another sous chef to come forth by the name of Catherine Keller. She greets the guests and reveals that 3 years ago, Julian Slowick tried to sleep with her. She refused his advances, and a week later, he tried again. And again, she refused. He didn't fire her, but he kept her in his kitchen and refused to look at her in the eye or speak to her for 8 months. The next course is called Man's Folly. Chef walks up and stands beside Catherine. She takes a pair of small golden scissors from the Taco Tuesday course and stabs Chef in the thigh with it. Don't worry, it's all a part of the show still. He apologizes to her for the past as Catherine smirks with so much satisfaction. Chef turns to the group and offers a means of escape to the male diners only. They would be given a 45-second head start, at which point members of the staff would attempt to catch them. I heard that. Bruh didn't even wait. The 45 seconds start abruptly as the men all do their best to run off. Tyler doesn't go at first, but Chef makes him. Catherine brings the girls inside to serve the man's folly dish. Dudgeonous crab in fermented yogurt whey, dried sea lettuce, umeboshi, and kelp. The women of the group do their best to manipulate Catherine into letting them go when they find out that it was actually her pitch to kill everyone tonight. So yeah, that's not happening. The staff has been released into the woods to catch the men that have each attempted to run to safety. As you may guess, they all got caught. All the men come back completely defeated, ashamed for leaving the women. And what do you know? Tyler's eating again. Luckily, he gets his payback because Chef calls him out. You. Me? You. Tell me why you're here. Because I want to swallow first. Oh. I want to experience your food, Chef. What were you told ahead of time? You told me it would be the greatest menu ever created. Right. And that everyone would die. Everyone would die. What? You had a date, not the young woman here tonight. What happened to her? Your date. She broke up with me, Chef. So you brought Margot. Why? It's just you don't offer seats for one. So you hired her knowing she'd die. Yes. Margot flies across the table and clocks him. Chef continues to out Tyler, revealing that they had been in contact for 8 months and swore Tyler into secrecy. He patronizes Tyler with trivial questions like, "Why do you think I brought you here, Tyler?" Tyler thinks it's because he's so knowledgeable about cooking and gastronomy and cooking tools, and Chef appeases him by saying this is true, but it's clear, oh so clear, that he can't stand Tyler's smug face and wants to smear it all over the hibachi grill. So he makes Tyler an offer he can't refuse: to cook for him. Tyler may know all about the kitchen that breeds asceticism, but he sure doesn't know how to read the room or how to decipher when someone is mocking him. Idiot. He pressures Tyler to cook a quick meal, shouting to the team the ingredients that he will need to make the dish. Tyler is struggling horribly out of nervousness and anxiety, sweating into the actual pan of the food. The scene cuts to the end where the food is done and Chef tries the lamb. He absolutely, unmistakably, certainly hates it. The course is called Tyler's undercooked lamb, inedible shallot leek butter sauce with an utter lack of cohesion. Tyler's dream is shattered as Julian tells him he is the reason why the mystery has been drained from all the art that is culinary. He whispers into the teary-eyed Tyler's ear, and Tyler snatches off his jacket and walks to the back room. Chef pulls Margot to the back of the kitchen where he tells her there is one more savory course left. To complete the course, he needs a specific barrel that should be in the corner behind her. He says that his negligent colleague Elsa didn't assign someone to bring it, so he will have Margot fetch it herself. He orders Elsa to give Margot the keys to go get it, and she's one of them now, so she better do it. As Margot goes to fetch the bucket, she sees Tyler's hanging body in a nearby room. This boy done deleted himself off the opinion of a chef. A psychotic chef. Back in the dining room, Chef offers explanation as to why the guests are being punished. Margot is out in the dark fetching the barrel that Chef told her to get, except she uses this opportunity to sneak into his personal cabin. She turns on the lights and realizes it's almost an exact replica of the kitchen and dining room where everything is taking place, except there is a bed in the back corner of this one, but the kitchen is there, so are the tables and chairs, and most noticeably, the silver door. Elsa emerges from the shadows to catch Margot trying to open the door. She takes a knife that sits on the table and circles the room while she explains to Margot that she is basically Queen Bee and she will not be replaced. Margot is like, "Girl, trust me, nobody wants your spots." Elsa swings her blade at Margot, catching her completely off guard, and the brawling begins. It's a pretty good fight that Margot kind of struggles to prevail in because little Elsa got hands with the knife. It takes Margot knocking her out with the Paco Jet Plus to bring her to her knees. She straddles Elsa, begging for her to stop, like, "Enough, I don't want to kill you, girl." The last thing Elsa says is that Julian never told her about the barrel. He never ordered her to get it, so therefore she couldn't have forgotten it or been negligent, as he so put it. That gives us some additional information here. One, that he intended to turn Elsa against Margot, and two, Elsa was expendable to him no matter how much he said he loved the crew. Margot jams the knife into Elsa's neck and screams as a life escapes her. She takes Elsa's keys and goes to the silver door. On the other side is a secluded room of a truly tormented man. It kind of reminded me of Kanye's cell at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. There were a few objects of furniture with lamps and a table in the middle, but the true attention grabber was all the pictures on the walls. Articles of a once young and hopeful Julian Slowick. Even the article Lillian Bloom wrote about him that earned him precedence over the Hawthorne. There was a photo of Julian and a woman with a child, and my guess it was his family. Then it cuts to a photo of him grimacing in a picture with Doug Barrick standing in front of the Hawthorne. He must have left his family behind to get to this point. Margot fixates her attention to a lone framed photo of a grinning Julian on the table. It's a plaque that reads, Hamburger Howie's Employee of the Month, August 1987, Julian Slowick. He wears a Kiss the Cook apron with a fresh patty on the edge of his spatula. He looks as happy as here. Margot immediately spots a transmitter and calls for help. Meanwhile, back in the dining room, Julian and the cooks are singing one of the finance bros' happy birthday.
You told him it was my birthday?
Seemed funny about 3 hours ago.
As soon as he blows the candles out, Margot rolls in the barrel and takes a seat. Julian sits with her and justifies that what he's doing is pure and that he can no longer be hurt. What do you know? Margot's SOS was received and someone has come to rescue. The staff cleans up the scene and gathers themselves while Julian coaches the guests on what to say. You'll be tempted to ask him for help, to plead even. This will be unwise. He cannot help you. Ask yourselves two things. One, if you really want to be responsible for the death of an innocent man. And two, ask yourself, this entire evening, why didn't you all try harder to fight back, to get out of here? Honestly, you probably could have. Something to think about. I mean, he's right. They all lied down and let him take advantage with little to no resistance. At most, someone threw a chair at the window, then apologized for doing it. Pitiful. The officer that received Margot's call walks into the room of wide-eyed people signaling they need help with their glossy eyeballs. They all want to speak up, but don't want to get him killed. Chef talks his way through, weaponizing his charm and charisma. The officer spots George, the washed-up actor, out of the group and asks for an autograph. Yes, an on-the-clock officer is responding to a distress signal and gets distracted by an actor and asks him to sign his autograph. Clown. Instead of writing his autograph, George writes, "Help us." The officer sees this and tells everyone to put their hands on their heads. He points his gun at the entire group as the guests try and state their case, that Julian is a psychopathic murderous ringmaster that's holding them hostage. The officer finally listens to everyone and decides to tell Julian to get on his knees. Everyone is so relieved and rejoices. He tells everyone not to move still, and slowly, very slowly, turns the gun in Margot's direction, but he doesn't stop there. He bends over to light the candle on the table with his freaking gun. Yes, my people, it was all fake. He was in on it, the chef was in on it, and so were the cooks. Everybody is absolutely stunned, petrified, and frozen in the moment as the last glimmer of hope sneaks away. I would have gone haywire at this point. Like, why didn't they group together and fight back? I'll never know why. Julian belittles Margot for choosing the wrong side, dubbing her as a taker, not a giver. Suddenly, the most brilliant idea comes to her. It's up to us to decide what we think she's thinking, but judging off of what happens next, Margot has probably figured, I've played with his emotions in the beginning, I'll play with them again. Remember what I taught you guys in the Pearl video review? Always play into crazy people's craziness, because when people like Julian here are off their rocker, reality and fantasy often blend, and you can use this to your advantage. She stands up and walks forward with a mean clap. I don't like your food. What did you say? I said, I don't like your food and I would like to send it back. Earlier in the film, Tyler had told Margot that this wasn't a place that you send the food back to. So it's pretty genius that she uses a huge pet peeve of Julian's to get under his skin. And quite honestly, this is all his fault because he spent so much time trying to vet Margot that he didn't even realize all the information that he was giving to her for her to now use against him. Genius. I'm sorry to hear that. What about my food is not to your liking? For starters, you've taken the joy out of eating. Every dish you've served tonight has been some intellectual exercise rather than something you want to sit and enjoy. When I eat your food, It tastes like it was made with no love. Well, this is ridiculous. We always cook with love, don't we?
Yes, chef.
Everyone knows that love is the most important ingredient. Then you're kidding yourself. You cook with obsession, not love. Even your hot dishes are cold. She tells Chef that he has failed his one job, which was to serve people, and that he bores her. This man literally looks like someone crapped in his cereal. He's having flashbacks of the time his mummy threw away his refrigerator art. Margot tells him that worst of all, she's still damn hungry. She's starved. All those little dips and dots ain't gonna feed anyone whose stomach isn't stapled. He asks her what she wants, and she says, a cheeseburger. A real cheeseburger. And this almost brings Chef to a happy place because burgers were his roots. They represented a time where he was in love with his craft and when he enjoyed serving others. Chef gets to making the best looking burger I've seen in years. It's juicy, plump, colorful, and looked like a perfect contender for a last meal. However, Margot tries one last time to escape, but with permission this time. Unfortunately, I think my eyes were a little bigger than my stomach. I understand. Can I get the rest to go? One moment, please. Julian walks over to her with a to-go box and a gift bag. Thank you for dining at Hawthorne. Margot is a bit stunned and in disbelief that he's actually letting her leave, that her plan worked. They both stare at one another, Julian with a glossy-eyed expression and look of satisfaction. I think he respected her wit so much that he was okay to let her go. I mean, she wasn't supposed to be there in the first place. And Julian also had a bit of a soft spot for Margot since they first interacted. On her way out, Margot takes a last look at all the guests. Some look defeated, some look like they wish they were her, some smile. Miss Lebrand ever so gently shoos Margot to let her know it's okay, just go. And I feel slight sorrow for these people. But I also don't understand why they didn't fight for themselves. Why not fight for your life? Julian looks to the door that Margot walks out of as if he were farewelling an old friend. He presumes the rest of the show, informing that no tips are accepted as gratuity is already included in the bill. The cooks place gift bags on the table as everybody actually proceeds to take their credit cards out to pay. Bunch of wimps. This has got to be the easiest kill in all of horror movie history. I once again thank you for dining with us tonight. You represent the ruin of my art in my life, and now you get to be a part of it. Part of what I hope is my masterpiece. I mean, dang, you couldn't compliment any of them on their way out? Like, you really gotta twist a knife there, don't you, Chef? The cooks come to the floor and dress it up with streaks of sauce and a pile of powder in the middle. They place a coat of marshmallows, yes, you heard me right, marshmallows on each of the guests, or should I say victims. And they also place a cap made of dark chocolate onto their heads. Human s'mores. I promise I couldn't make this up if I wanted to. My mind does not get this dark. The s'more. The most offensive assault on humankind ever contrived. Wait, the most offensive assault on What about 9/11? The Holocaust, the Atlantic slave trade, Pearl Harbor, war, the Black Plague? It's everything wrong with us, and yet we associate it with innocence, with childhood, mom and dad. But what transforms this monstrosity is fire, the purifying flame. It nourishes us, warms us, reinvents us, forges, and destroys us. We must embrace the flame. Chef takes out a handful of coal in his bare hands. He walks it to the middle of the dining room. I love you all. We love you, Chef. No. Meanwhile, Margot is on a boat jetting the hell out of there. It dies in the middle of the ocean, but she sees the explosion clearly. She gets out her burger and eats it. I didn't expect that ending. Heck, I didn't expect that movie. I thought she would try and rescue the guests, but she really was thinking about herself, which is a very realistic outcome. I think movies condition us to think that we always need to go back and save the others, but being selfish or simply putting yourself first is okay too in a circumstance like this. Sometimes it's all you can do. What I didn't like is how soon the movie showed its hand. I could accept that if there were more twists and turns coming, but there weren't any. Well, not enough to pique my interest beyond what it already was. Once Jeffrey deleted himself, we saw just what we would be getting from there on out. Anna Taylor-Joy always does a phenomenal job, but I just don't think this movie would have suffered without her because this role could have easily been played by any decent actor. I could easily see a Florence Pugh, a Camila Mendes, a Kat Graham, heck, Anne Hathaway. It doesn't matter. I can appreciate the fact that this film took its time with the set design. I imagine how much money they saved only filming in like 3 different places. The food presentation was very impressive as well. I've got to say, this is the year of bashing the wealthy. The menu had few similarities with the Triangle of Sadness that won me over. Its ability to combine horror, suspense, and comedy was something I could get behind. If I were asked to watch this again, I would definitely do so with a friend or family member, because unlike the Triangle of Sadness, this movie isn't for an acquired taste. Besides the culinary lingo, the menu made this movie basic enough for anyone to understand. Wealthy people arrive at a secluded island at the invitation of a psycho, and said psycho plots to kill wealthy people. Simple. I'm gonna give this movie a 5.5 out of 10. Yeah, I think that's a good spot. It's not bad, it's not great, it's good enough. Alright, let me know what you think about this jarring film. Did you appreciate the 2 worlds of food and horror coming together on this hot plate? Or would you rather keep the 2 separate because you don't even like when 2 different types of food are touching one another? Let me know down in the comments. Don't forget to feed the machine its daily dose of likes, comments, and subscriptions. God bless you all, and ciao for now. Get it? Ciao.